Here's this week's big review, and we're covering Moto Cellos from Performance Samples. Now, the rise of Performance Samples continues, and this week they've released the first part of a new collection. There's also going to be bass, violins and violas, as far as I understand it. This is the cellos, and it runs in the full version of Contact 5.5.1 and above, and it's around 2 GB in total, so quite a small library. It downloads using the Continuata system and features 6 cellos recorded in 4 microphone positions with 3 velocity layers and 2 different types of attack. So let's have a listen. The interface here is just about as simple as you can get. It's got controls for the 4 mic positions, which are close first chair, close section, decker and wide. There are panning and volume controls for each of these, and you can route them to different contact outputs. There's only really one main articulation to speak of, which is a sustain, where you can choose to engage the legato transitions or not with the key switches, and it's also possible to change the position of those key switches. If you've used other Performance Samples libraries before, then you've got a pretty good idea of how this works. The Italian phrase con moto literally means with movement, and that's the USP of this library, as the samples have been snipped out of performances. The tone here is warm, and on the whole it's well balanced, but it's not especially dry. Even the close mics retain a fair amount of hall ambience. This really is one of those libraries that you can just pick up and play, and it does a decent job of both longs and shorts. It can also be played at speed without becoming unstuck, so I really like that. Moto Cellos really excels at legato phrasing as well, especially if you bear in mind that the slower attacks can be played by hitting the keys at lighter velocities. I do have several gripes with this library. First, there are lots of notes where when you start to play a phrase, with the hard attacks you'll get a kind of double attack sound on the first note. This is most notable on the decker and wide mics. This is mentioned within the online manual, and also within the manual there are warnings for logic users that the library may not run correctly for them all of the time, and there are also instructions in that manual for going under the hood and changing the velocity range of the attacks. And this is really where I have the problem. Now, although I do like the sound of this library and many of Performance Samples' other products, I do feel that the time has come for them to step it up a gear and start working on some general improvements to build their legacy of content. I know that their mantra is function over form, as stated on their website, but I think it would really help them to deliver their instruments with more appealing interfaces, especially this time around where in the manual users are being told to fiddle under the hood to change some parameters. This is really the sort of thing that should be on the main GUI. It's the same for the double attacks and the logic and audio unit issues. Yes, all of this is made clear on the website so that users can be aware of this before they decide to purchase the library, but this is almost becoming a list of issues for people to be mindful of before they decide to purchase. And if I'm looking at a library, I don't want to be thinking about, does it work with this particular setup that I have, and do I have to go under the hood? I just want things to work. Cost is another issue, and quite frankly, I also think this library is too much for a single string section with basically one articulation. It's a great sound, but nevertheless, it's very limited content for the full price of $149. If I was looking at this library as a new user, I think I'd probably wait until all 4 sections are complete. Maybe they'll be bundled together at some point, and perhaps some of the issues I've previously mentioned will be dealt with. Until then, it's really difficult for me to recommend Moto Cellos as value for money within the current marketplace, despite the top-notch legato performance. For more info and audio demos, do check the Performance Samples website. Thank you so much for watching. That's just a small taste of the Samplecast, a weekly podcast and YouTube show for sample library geeks and plugin enthusiasts. You can find out more information at thesamplecast.com. Don't forget to subscribe.